Africa's battlefield is getting a Russian makeover. Wagner is out. The Africa Corps is in. Same guns, same tactics. But this time, Putin is holding the leash. For years, Wagner was Russia's dirty weapon in the Sahel, a mercenary gang that thrived on chaos. Praised by Putin in 2023 for its courage and heroism. Yet infamous for atrocities and a mutiny against Moscow. Then came Prigozhin's fiery plane crash, lawsuits, EU sanctions, and UN calls for war crimes probes. Wagner became a brand too toxic to keep.
Yes, would Putin have done this? Well, he has certainly the Russian security forces have a history of poisoning people at home and abroad, and political opponents or people that Mr. Putin has previously called traitors. And he has, of course, called Prigozhin, well, he's called some of them traitors. But, why did it take so long? Your original question. Yeah, this is interesting. In a way, it took a long time. In a way, it was quick. I think the answer to that is why didn't it happen in July? Is that and the General Surovikin's dismissal or disappearance and dismissal yesterday. Well, I think there is some division in the military on how the war has gone, and so likely Prigozhin had some sympathizers in the Russian military, as does Surovikin, and so making sure that those people have been demoted or removed, and this has happened actually with some members of the Russian military a little lower down over the last month or so. So I think that's probably why it has, and also making sure they know where the bulk of Wagner forces are. Wagner was asked after that rebellion to turn in its equipment. So presumably that's now been done. The bulk of the forces have arrived in Belarus. So I think it took a little bit of time to get all of those ducks in a row. And so in that sense, this timing, is probably the earliest such a thing could have happened without causing further trouble or rebellions within the Russian military. Also, he's largely been divested, Prigozhin, of some of his bigger businesses prior to this. So, if we look retrospectively, this timing sort of is almost the earliest it could have been done in terms of getting all of those ducks in a row. People are self-censoring. So this is a society that has radically been, has really been put under strict controls in the last 2 years. So to see some elite infighting and this attempted mutiny with Prigozhin was remarkable. Now to see, this dramatic action taken sort of indicates they thought he was a threat, right? And they don't want that threat any longer. And so I think it's also a broader message to elites that, don't challenge me. I think a dictator tends to say that when they're feeling insecure. And so, as I said, I think it indicates instability in Russia. Russia's not a country we necessarily want to see unstable and broken apart because of the nuclear weapons and who gets those. So the fact that there is some division in the military, and I think this was pretty plainly seen in June, is worrisome for the stability of the country. Now, on the upside, if it meant the end of Putin and suddenly the start of a liberal democratic regime, well, okay, great, but I don't think that's what's going to happen next.
So Moscow hit refresh. Meet the Africa Corps, Wagner's successor, but in uniform. No rogue commanders, no deniable operations. This force is run directly by Russia's Ministry of Defense. Recruitment: elite Russian soldiers plus ex-Wagner fighters. In short, Wagner 2.0 with Kremlin command and control. Already they are on the ground, fighting alongside Mali's army against insurgents, replacing Wagner in the Central African Republic, Wagner's long-time stronghold since 2018. There, Wagner once guarded the president, fought rebels, and secured mining deals. Now, Russia's defense ministry wants CAR to switch contracts, pay in cash, and deal with the Africa Corps instead. No more shadowy payments through gold and diamonds. Moscow wants control of the money and the message. This isn't just about guns, it's a rebrand. Analysts call it a Kremlin cleanup job. Erase the Wagner name, keep the muscle. By going official, Putin avoids the legal baggage, the mercenary stigma, and the lawsuits. The Africa Corps gives him legitimacy. The same soldiers, just with state-backed logos and telegram channels. And the timing is perfect. Western forces have been booted out of the Sahel since 2022. Anti-French, anti-American sentiment is raging. The West is distracted. Ukraine, Gaza, China. Into that vacuum, Russia steps in. Putin even bragged at the 2023 Russia-Africa summit. Over 40 African countries now have military deals with Moscow. Guns, training, equipment. Russia is selling it all. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Wagner did not stop the chaos. Terrorists have only spread further. From Mali to Burkina Faso to Niger.
One thing that the Russians do is, first of all, to tell Africans that they are the answers to Africa's problems and not the West. And then they go back to history, telling us that the war in the Sahel is still being fought till today because the Western countries have failed to adequately deal with the jihadists, for example, that are very active in the Sahel, in countries like Burkina Faso and in Mali. So the French have been involved in that fight against jihadist groups since 2013, but clearly we haven't really seen so much of results. So the Russians have capitalized on such things, telling Africans that no, you don't need France as a partner, you don't need the West as a partner, you need a new partner that cares much about Africa and that will do things differently from Africa, from the West. So that's one propaganda.
Civilians keep dying. Even UN officials admit the region's security is deteriorating rapidly, with jihadists now using drones, crime networks, and online recruitment. One security expert put it bluntly, and I quote, "I don't see what Wagner has brought to the battle," unquote. So what does Putin really want? Influence, resources, optics. Wagner was chaos with profits. The Africa Corps is order with a Kremlin stamp. Same brutality, better PR. It's about carving influence where the West retreated. It's about gold, diamonds, and cash wrapped in the language of security cooperation. Make no mistake, Africa hasn't escaped Wagner. It's just been repainted. The Africa Corps is Putin's new parliamentary franchise, polished, centralized, and designed to last. The battlefield, still bloody. The players, still Russian. The difference, now the Kremlin signs the checks. So the big question, is this Africa's security solution or just Wagner in uniform? With Rishika Aradhya, Bureau Report, India Today Global.